Hello friend. I want to tell you about the Alfa Romeo 166 car. Alfa Romeo cars are sometimes rightly perceived as one of the most unreliable. However, this model definitely stands out above its brand. It is a little known, large 166. You can buy it for really ridiculous money, but will you keep it? The Alfa 166's cabin has other advantages than spaciousness. It is styled as a sporty one, has comfortable seats with good lateral support, a nice steering wheel and a cockpit completely different from comparable, boring German cars. It's more about the atmosphere than the dimensions. Technically, the Alfa 166, as a cousin of the Lancia Kappa, rides on a full multi-link. This is a slightly different design than in the 156 and definitely more durable, but the assumption remains identical. The effect is not, because the 166 lacks the agility of its smaller cousin. On the other hand, high-speed stability and ride comfort can be rated as 5. Engines. The engines are placed transversely, and the drive is directed to the front axle. The Alfa 166, unlike its predecessor, the 164, did not even have four-wheel drive as an option. It was also not equipped with the Cellespeed automated transmission, known from the 156. There is only a 4 or 5 speed, rather slow automatic, but manual transmissions were rather popular. The basic source of power for this model are petrol engines. Only one diesel engine deserved to be installed under the hood of the Royal Alfa, and it is a very successful 2.4 JTD engine, and later 2.4 JTD multijet. It reaches 136 hydrogen phosphide, 140 and 150 HP before the facelift, or 175 and 185 HP after the facelift, already as multijet. The basic petrol engine is the unsuccessful twin spark with a capacity of 2.0 liters and power of 150 to 155 HP. Theoretically, its equivalent is the 2.0 terabytes engine with 205 hydrogen phosphide, but it is worth knowing that it is a turbocharged engine and a V6. Also theoretically the best, but in practice nobody wants to touch it. The 6-cylinder Busso engines are different designs, with a capacity of 2.5 L, 188-190 hydrogen phosphide, 3.0 L, 220-226 hydrogen phosphide, and 3.2 L, 240 hydrogen phosphide. Here we draw attention to the fact that all the more powerful versions of each petrol engine were used at the beginning of production, while in newer Alfas they were slightly weaker. The 3.2-liter engine appeared only after the facelift. Which engine to choose? Common sense tells us to immediately reject the 2-liter units and focus on the 2.45-cylinder diesel or the 2.5, 3.0 and 3.2 petrols. These engines deserve attention. Leave the rest to the unaware. Diesel or petrol, it depends on what you expect from the engine. If fuel consumption is to be within a reasonable range, max 10 L, 100 kilometers, average about 8 L, 100 kilometers, then diesel is for you. This is a successful engine regardless of the generation, which we have already described in the context of the 159 model. The comments there concerned only its newer version, the JTDM. However, the engine before the generation change had a 10-valve head, not a 20-valve head, and was not equipped with a particulate filter. Its work culture is lower, but its durability is slightly higher. Repair costs are cheaper. The problem is that the older the diesel, the more it requires, so the choice of generation is not so important. It is important to change the timing belt in the 2.4 JTD engine no less frequently than every 100,000 kilometers. You need to check the intake manifold and the EGR system. In this respect, the engines from 2003 to 2007, i.e. the multijet, are more problematic. The Alfa 166 did not use the more troublesome 200 and 210 horsepower versions, so buying a diesel is only burdened with the risk that you will buy a worn-out engine. Those who want to have a real Alfa should opt for the fuel-guzzling Busso V6 units. The 2.5-liter engine already reaches a good 190 horsepower, which makes it a very good basic engine. It provides decent performance, worthy of Alfa, and its design lets you sleep soundly. You just need to keep an eye on the oil and timing drive. This is a durable engine that sometimes struggles with minor electrical and accessory failures, including the electronic gas pedal, but that's all. This one can still be repaired quite cheaply or simply replaced, for example, by buying a used one from the more popular Alfa 156. The same cannot be said of the larger Busso. The 3-liter is definitely a rarer specimen, but it already gives a taste of sporty performance and, like its smaller counterpart, sounds beautiful. The pinnacle is the 3.2-liter engine with 240 hydrogen phosphide, which allows the not-so-light car to accelerate to 100 km per hour in 7.4 seconds. It is more popular than the 3-liter, because it powered the 156, 147 and GT models. The problem with Alfa's V6 engines is of course the high fuel consumption. 10 to 12 L, 100 km can be considered a good, average result. In city driving it is difficult to drop below this upper value, but it is easy to reach 15 to 18 L, 100 km. The solution is LPG, and in this case there is no problem in installing a good quality installation. This is an engine that is difficult to break, but also difficult to repair, and it would be a shame, paradoxically, to lose a lot of money in the name of saving money. What's wrong with the Alfa 166? The suspension, which is the bane of the 156 model, doesn't cause as many problems in the 166. The problem is that while you can buy practically everything for the 156, and still relatively cheaply, you can't quite get it for the 166. For example, rear wishbones were hard to come by just a few years ago, and even today their presence in catalogs doesn't always mean real availability. The complicated design is expensive, but you don't always have to do everything. If you're buying this car, it's worth taking a good look at the running gear and determining the repair cost before buying. The steering gear is also worn out in most copies, which means the Alfa 166 doesn't drive as well. Corrosion in the 166 is not as common as in the 156, but it does appear. You should look for it on the floor and sills. Electrics, as is the case with Alfas. It varies, but the 166 is quite carefully made in this respect. If the car has not undergone a serious, inept repair or has been badly neglected, you should not be afraid of it. The richer the equipment, the more things can break. Unfortunately, the interior of the car is not the best fit, and the materials are not the best. Sometimes some elements fall off, and there are visible scratches on others. The leather upholstery is often very cracked, and the fabric is worn. This is why well-maintained cars can cost up to 3 times more than worse ones of a similar year. It is mainly the well-maintained interior that defines a model that is worth attention. Honestly, it all depends on the specific model, because the Alfa 166 is a technically good car, but it often ends up in the hands of people looking for something cheap that they can't really afford. This is not an Audi 102.5 TDI that will withstand anything. You can't compare the repair costs with the purchase price, because then the 166 model doesn't make sense, like any other Alfa until 2005, i.e. until the 159 model. Operating costs are high due to fuel consumption. The 166 model did not have fuel-efficient engines. Repair costs are also high. Replacing a complete set of wishbones on the front axle is expensive. It is also worth adding a similar amount for a complete set at the rear, plus toe-in adjustment. Of course, it is not always necessary to do the entire suspension, but this only illustrates the situation. Engines are another topic that needs to be considered. A 5-cylinder diesel will always cost you more to service than a 1.9 JTD with 4. On the other hand, V6 engines, although durable, when they break down require expensive parts, hard to find and even harder to find, good mechanics. It is worth knowing that V6 petrol units also have dual-mass flywheels, and they are not cheaper than in diesels. They are more durable, but replacing them with a clutch is expensive. As you can see, any major Alfa repair calls into question the point of buying the car. That's why there are so many neglected examples on the market and why you should approach each one with great caution, and it's best to skip the cheap ones right away. Is it worth buying an Alfa 166? Yes, provided that you treat this car as a young-timer or simply a toy, a second car in the family. If it is to be your only vehicle, it is worth finding the most well-maintained example, put a few $100s into it and enjoy the ride. Of course, only with the engines that we recommended. It's definitely not a one-off that you'll buy and drive until the end, because that end will come pretty quickly. It's better to buy a BMW E39 or Audi 100 or Opel Omega with that mindset, but definitely not an Alfa Romeo 166. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.
I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with, and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro.